right. So, for those who haven't been here before, this is a new incarnation of an event that we have had for over 2 years. And so we switched from a Wednesday to a Thursday night a couple of months ago. And one of the new components that we began to include is to focus on a book, to be inspired by a book. And the very first book that I chose is one of my favorites. It is The Alchemist. And this is a book that I have been reading on and on, or not on and off, but every summer, 1, 2, maybe 3 times for about 8 years. And so it was going to be time to start reading this anyway, but I thought, oh my gosh, this would be such an amazing book to share. I've wanted to do a book study on it for so long. And so every week we are going through 10-ish or so pages. We could go faster, but there's just so much in every single little chunk. And so where we left off last week was the boy and the Englishman had met, and they were getting ready to go and travel on this caravan that was going to take them to the oasis. And this was great for both of them because they're both following their personal legend. The boy finally decided that he was going to not go back to Spain and be a shepherd again. He said he can do that later, but that it really felt so important, like a call on his heart, on his soul, to go and do whatever this dream was trying to inform him of. And the Englishman is someone who is trying to become an alchemist. And so after decades and millions of hours of study and tons of time and energy and money and all that kind of stuff, they're both now on this journey, on this caravan towards this oasis. And they're actually starting to learn things from each other. So where the boy has had more of a sort of intuitive way of life, and the Englishman has been all about studying and theory and books and reading and all that kind of stuff, now they're starting to sort of learn from each other. And so the boy is thinking about and looking into the Englishman's books. They were strange books. They spoke about Mercury, salt, dragons, and kings, and he didn't understand any of it. But there was one idea that seemed to repeat itself throughout all the books. All things are the manifestation of one thing only. Now, I know that this is a book of fiction, but come on. This is what we're talking about every time we come together, that there's only one thing going on. And if there's only one thing going on, it means everyone and everything is that, right? There's no separation. There's no duality. Everyone and everything is this thing, whatever you want to call it, and all of it all the time. And the work that we do is not only to remember that, but to embody it more fully so that we can show up as more and more of that, knowing that there's that in everyone else that at some level is doing the same thing. And so as he's pouring through these books, he's learning about something called alchemy. And the Englishman is so excited to tell him all about this, but what he tells him is that there's this thing called the Emerald Tablet. And the Emerald Tablet is where the information is about alchemy. And so the Englishman is talking to the boy, but the boy's asking him, why do we need all these books if all that information, like the very crux of it, can be written on this one little tablet? So that we can understand those few lines, the Englishman answered, without appearing really to believe what he said. The book that most interested the boy told the stories of the famous alchemists. They were the men who had dedicated their entire lives to the purification of metals in their laboratories. They believed that if a metal were heated for many years, it would free itself of all its individual properties, and what was left would be the soul of the world. This soul of the world allowed them to understand anything on the face of the earth because it was the language with which all things communicated. They called that discovery the master work. It was part liquid and part solid. Can't you just observe men and omens in order to understand the language? The boy asked. You have a mania for simplifying everything, answered the Englishman, irritated. Alchemy is a serious discipline. Every step has to be followed exactly as it was followed by the masters. So when he's talking about how alchemy just is this process of letting go, peeling away all the layers, all the impurities, all of this stuff, isn't that kind of like what we're doing or what we are meant to be doing? All the stories, all the thoughts, all the beliefs, all the roles, all the expectations, all the attachments to the roles and thoughts and beliefs and expectations. What happens when we slowly or not so slowly get rid of those things? We peel away, we let go, we let go, we let go, and eventually what are we left with? We're left with the essence of who we are. There's no lens, there's no worldview anymore, there's just being. And this is what is ours to get back to. This is what is ours to remember. This is what is ours to embody. So as they're talking, as he's pouring through the Englishman's books, the boy is learning about the illiquid part of it, which is the elixir of life. And this is kind of like a cure-all. It's also kind of like a fountain of youth, because once you drink it, once you have it, then you never get old anymore. And there's also the solid part, which is known as the philosopher's stone. And this is the really cool thing where you take a teeny tiny bit of it and put it in a whole bunch of liquid metal, and it turns any kind of metal into gold. And so the boy starts becoming more and more fascinated and starts reading some of these books, starts reading about all of these alchemists that have fulfilled and realized their personal legend by becoming alchemists and having this cool skill of turning any kind of metal into gold. But then as he's thinking about all of this, he's also thinking about how he spent time with the crystal merchant. And there was that time where the crystal merchant made him but he let him clean the glasses. And even though the boy was like, well, why did you let me do that? And he said, well, you wanted the money and you needed to be able to do some work. But for him, it was because he needed to cleanse himself of impure and negative thoughts, right? So he's thinking about all of this, and then he's realizing, the boy was becoming more and more convinced that alchemy could be learned in one's daily life. And so he goes back to the books, he pours through a whole bunch of stuff, but when it comes down to actually learning how to do it, it gets really confusing and complicated because there's all these weird drawings and obscure texts and bizarre codes that he doesn't understand. And so he goes to the Englishman and says, come on, why do they make things so complicated? And the boy also notices that the Englishman was very irritable because he was missing his books. So that those who have the responsibility for understanding can understand, he said. Imagine if everyone went around transforming lead into gold. Gold would lose its value. It's only those who are persistent and willing to study things deeply who achieve the master work. That's why I'm here in the middle of the desert. I'm seeking a true alchemist who will help me to decipher the codes. And so here we can see there's a huge difference between the boy and the alchemist. The boy, again, is really just sort of going along by faith. He is going along with intuitive knowing and wisdom and trust. And even though he's gone back and forth many times of, I'm just going to go back to what I knew because this is way too expansive and it's too scary and my nervous system is overloaded, the Englishman is like, I got to read the books. I got to spend the time. I got to do the studying. The more I do it, then the more I'll learn, and then the more I'll be able to do it. But for him, it's all theory that's never being put into practice. Whereas the boy is following his intuitive sort of wisdom, but he isn't actually learning any kind of steps along the way about how to do this alchemy thing. And so they're each following their way, and they're watching each other, and they're kind of trying to learn from each other, but they're both getting frustrated. And so one day, the boy returns the books to the Englishman, and the Englishman's super excited, thinking, this kid has gone and read a whole bunch of my super precious, amazing books. He's going to know all this stuff. He asks him, did you learn anything? And the boy tells him, I learned that the world has a soul, and that whoever understands that soul can also understand the language of things. I learned that many alchemists realized their personal legends and wound up discovering the soul of the world, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life. But above all, I learned that these things are all so simple that they could be written on the surface of an emerald. The Englishman was disappointed. The years of research, the magic symbols, the strange words, and the laboratory equipment, none of this had made any impression on the boy. His soul must be too primitive to understand those things, he thought. He took back his books and packed them away again in their bags. "Go back to watching the caravan," he said. "That didn't teach me anything either." The boy went back to contemplating the silence of the desert and the sand raised by the animals. "Everyone has his or her own way of learning things," he said to himself. "His way isn't the same as mine, nor mine as his. But we're both in search of our personal legends, and I respect him for that." And so they continue going on their way, and by this point, the caravan is traveling by day and by night, but because there is this threat of war, because there are bandits around, they have to be more and more careful as they go, making less and less noise. Finally, they're not lighting any fires, they're hanging out in the dark at night, and any sound is starting to freak the people in the caravan out. But by this point, the boy has also made really good friends with the camel driver. And so one night, they're sitting there, and he's noticing that the camel driver isn't stressed out about all of these sounds or how everybody else is freaking out. And he asks the camel driver, "How is this? How are you feeling okay, not freaking out?" And so what the camel driver tells him is, "I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you will be a happy man. You'll see that there is life in the desert, that there are stars in the heavens, and that tribesmen fight because they are part of the human race. Life will be a party for you, a grand festival, because life is the moment we're living right now." And so this is another part of the alchemy, right? Because how often do we get so distracted by whatever is going on around us, by the thoughts that we're thinking about what is going on around us, instead of just being curious and noticing, but continuing to shift our attention to who and what we truly are and what we are truly capable of. We can get so pulled out all the time. We can even get pulled out by our own thoughts, our own beliefs, the stories that we are telling, and those attachments that we have to whatever it is that we've gone through up until now. So he's thinking about all of this. The caravan keeps plodding along. Everybody's being really careful. And then one night, they get to a spot, and the boy looks out in the distance, and it looks like the stars are actually falling down onto the sand. And the camel driver tells him, "That looks that way because that's the oasis." And the boy's like, "Well, why don't we go there right now?" And he's like, "Well, because right now we have to sleep." So talk about being present, right? The boy awoke as the sun rose. There in front of him, where the small stars had been the night before, was an endless row of date palms stretching across the entire desert. "We've done it," said the Englishman, who had also awakened early. But the boy was quiet. He was at home with the silence of the desert, and he was content just to look at the trees. He still had a long way to go to reach the pyramids, and someday this morning would just be a memory. But this was the present moment, the party the camel driver had mentioned, and he wanted to live it as he did the lessons of his past and his dreams of the future. Although the vision of the date palms would someday be just a memory, right now it signified shade, water, and a refuge from the war. Yesterday, the camel's groan signaled danger, and now a row of date palms could herald a miracle. The world speaks many languages, the boy thought. Short section this week because the next section is really long. So anyway, the title of my talk today is based on this alchemizing process that the boy is realizing can be learned in every moment and every day. The alchemy of living. And so if we take a look at these 4 very precious bottles, they have very good precious labels on them. And so the first one is, when everything is stripped away, we're left with the essence of being. That's bottle number 1. Because there's only one thing going on, all is connected, and there is a language that interconnects everything because everything is the manifestation of this one thing only. So there's the one thing potion. There is power and peace in living in the present moment, because when we live in the present moment, even when there are things vying for our attention, trying to distract us, then we are focusing on who and what we are. We are approaching life and showing up, experiencing life as that, rather than from the circumstances that we are experiencing. And the last one is your path. Your path is your own. Nobody can live your life for you. You can't live anyone's life or travel anyone's journey for them. And so the alchemy of living is to intentionally, constantly strip away everything distracting us from more fully embodying our truth, living in the present moment, and honoring our path while allowing everyone and everything else to do the same. Thank you, and so it is.